To the angel of the church in Thyatira write, the words of the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. I know your works, your love and faith and service and patient endurance, and that your latter works exceed the first. But I have this against you, that you tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess and is teaching and seducing my servants to practice sexual immorality and to eat food sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she refuses to repent of her sexual immorality. Behold, I will throw her onto a sickbed, and those who commit adultery with her I will throw into great tribulation, unless they repent of her works. And I will strike her children dead. And all the churches will know that I am he who searches mind and heart, and I will give to each of you according to your works. But to the rest of you in Thyatira, who do not hold this teaching, who have not learned what some call the deep things of Satan, to you I say, I do not lay on you any other burden. Only hold fast what you have until I come. The one who conquers and who keeps my works until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, as when earthen pots are broken in pieces, even as I myself have received authority from my Father. And I will give him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
We're right in downtown Akhisar, a bustling Turkish town here in west central Turkey.
But then you turn and look over the fencing, and it's totally different.
Exactly. We've got the ancient city of Thyatira right here. So the modern city is built around the ancient city.
Compared to some of the other places we've seen, there's not much here.
This is part of the issue of urban archaeology, you know, when a modern city is built over an ancient one.
So I would imagine we have a lot more underneath us.
Yeah, all around here, if you dig down under these apartment buildings, you're going to find ruins.
What are the buildings that we're looking at?
Well, we've got a Roman stoa, we've got a later Byzantine basilica, so we're clearly in the central part of the ancient city.
You were explaining the difference between tea and coffee between U.S. and Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey is very much a tea culture. So in the mornings, they don't have coffee, they'll have tea. It's only later in the day they'll have coffee, and they'll tend to be not black coffee like we drink, but you know, flavored coffees, sweet coffees.
When I think of Turkey, I think about Turkish coffee. You go to get that, though, ask for Turkish coffee in the morning.
You don't.
That's a faux pas. Why is that a faux pas?
Well, Turkish coffee is typically drunk only after at least lunch, or more typically after the evening meal. It's like the final course, you know, usually with fruit or some sort of a sweet.
So what is it like to live in a place where you're eating and dining and living right next to such history?
Yeah, for me, the immediacy of these texts, you know, is just renewed over and over when I come back here and visit them. I'm reading them and re-engaging with these texts. So it's just a constant reminder of, you know, John and Paul and the other apostles speaking to me in a much, for me, much more vivid way.
Does it make you more passionate about what the Bible has to say?
Oh, very much so. And that passion in me is to communicate it and share it with others. So that's why I'm so delighted that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been pronouncing it Thyatira. You've been pronouncing it
Thyatira.
Which is?
The influence of hanging around with some Greek guides who know how to speak Greek.
Pronounce Greek.
Well, it's the central letter of the seven, and it's the longest. So it's a bit ironic that the least number of ruins are in this city.
Right.
But Jesus speaks the most words to this particular church. Yeah. And we've got a very famous lady from this city. Do you remember her?
Yes, Lydia from Acts.
Yeah, and Paul runs into her in Philippi when he's there, a Roman colony. So she apparently is representing the guild of the purple dyers in there, selling them the dye they need for their togas and clothing. This is a city that had many trade guilds, and we know them from the inscriptions here in the archaeological park. They have two inscriptions that mention the fullers and the wool workers. So we know they were active in this city for centuries.
One of the things that Mark talks about throughout this trip is this element of the first century world called the trade guilds. Very similar to our modern unions. If you wanted to participate in the economy of the day, it was helpful to belong to a trade guild. And to belong to the trade guild, you had to pay your dues, you had to agree with what they agreed with. And a lot of that was steeped in some form of idolatry, where there was a god or a deity that was associated with each guild. There was this pressure to accept what they taught, to go to these banquets and these feasts that they would hold, which were usually associated with idolatry and sexual immorality. And so as a Christian father, you're trying to provide for your family. You want to be able to work, and you have some kind of skill. It's going to be harder for you to provide for your family if you don't belong to a guild. And so the pressure was just economic.
Let's talk about the content of the letter, because it seems like Jesus gets more stern.
Yeah, he's really in their face.
He really is. What are they struggling with?
Well, we have a mention of another Old Testament figure here. Remember, in our last church in Pergamon, we had Balaam. Here we have Jezebel, so that's kind of her symbolic name of a false prophetess now who is again advocating accommodation. So what do? You become a Christian. Can you attend these guild meetings? You might lose your union card if you don't show up. Your networking, all that goes along with being a prosperous business person. Simply disengaging, they were making a comment that they no longer approved of their fellow tradesmen, and their activities.
Visiting Thyatira really drove home how easy it would be to be pressured into worldliness, and how Christians would wrestle with that and struggle with that, to compromise just a little bit at a time, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're like the world.
I'm Craig.
And I'm Stu, and we're the founders of Appian Media.
We really hope that you've enjoyed the content that you've just seen. This was only made available through the generous donations of so many of you.
We believe that the world should have biblically accurate, visually engaging content about the Bible, and it should be free for everyone.
We would encourage you to visit the membership page of appianmedia.org and consider becoming a reoccurring member. Everything that you donate to Appian Media is tax deductible.
However you decide to donate, we really appreciate your support.